Hi, and welcome to SpondyCast, where we bring together the best medical minds, thought leaders, scientists, patients, and caregivers to inform and inspire the spondylitis community. I'm your host, Jill Miller, living my best spa life, knowing that how we meet today has the power to change everything going forward. Please note that the information provided in this podcast should not be considered medical advice. We do encourage all listeners to consult their healthcare professionals for medical concerns. Thank you for listening, and we hope you find our discussion today enlightening. Hi, and welcome to SpondyCast. Today, our guest is Loribeth Cohen, PT. She is the owner and founder of Refit, a unique fitness and wellness center in Glenview, Illinois, that incorporates Western and Eastern treatment practices to heal her clients. Certified in physical therapy, integrated manual therapy, Pilates, Ayurveda, and neuro-emotional techniques, Loribeth combines modalities to find the underlying root of her client's pain and dis-ease. Loribeth's goal is to empower patients to listen to their body rhythms to detect acute imbalances so they can be resolved. She guides her clients so they can remove blockages, promote energy flow, and heal the body from within. Loribeth specializes in chronic conditions, autoimmune disorders, and rehabilitation. In her spare time, Loribeth enjoys gardening and wilderness camping with her husband. Welcome, Loribeth. We're going to talk about Ayurveda today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so thrilled. So SpondyCast, as you know, is about living your best life. You and I have had a long relationship, and you have helped me get to where I feel like I'm living my best life. And I found it so empowering along the journey. And so I wanted to have you here to talk a little bit about Ayurveda and some of the benefits. And yeah, we're going to get into it.
All right. Jill, I love how you start each podcast with saying that about living your best life, because that's really what Ayurveda is all about. I feel that Ayurveda just doesn't give us a map. You know, sometimes you're like, I need a map. Where am I go? You know, what I need a plan, or I need a roadmap. And it doesn't only give you the map, but a map's no good unless you know where you are on that map. And I feel today with Instagram and TikTok, you hear all these things of like, oh, drink lemon water. Lemon water is good for you. And so people will come in and say, yes or no, lemon water, you know, and I'll be like, well, who are we talking about and why are you taking it? Meaning like everything that we take in has an effect on our system, right? So lemon is astringent, so it's drying. So somebody that has dry eyes or dry skin, I wouldn't recommend it for. Lemon also helps stoke the digestive fire. So if you don't feel an appetite, lemon water would be good. But if your fire is real high and you're having acid reflux, lemon would be bad. So I wouldn't recommend it. So that was kind of my example on like how Ayurveda gives us a way of assessing where we are, so we know how to stay in balance or return to balance. And that's I kind of feel like it not only gives me the map, but it tells me where I am on that map and brings me back to my true nature and to feeling more balanced.
What does Ayurveda mean in translation?
So in translation, Ayurveda literally means the science or the knowledge of life. And it's only one of the Vedic sciences. There's Vastu, there's astrology, there's yoga, there's engineering, and so Ayurveda is one of those Vedic sciences. It is about over 5,000 years old, and it's a holistic medicine system from India that's based on nature. It's preventative wellness. And it looks at the unique constitution of every individual, as well as moving a person from a state of dis-ease or imbalance to more wholeness. And so I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, you describe it sometimes like you've always said to me, the middle ground, like the middle path.
Sarva kameshu mayatam. Okay. That's embedded in me from the beginning, because that really was like the crux of when I went through my training, finding a middle ground and a middle path and coming back to it. And then the more I follow Ayurveda and the diet, lifestyle, and routine piece of Ayurveda, my middle path gets bigger and bigger. meaning when we're out of balance, it's kind of like you're walking a tightrope and you have that, say, one cocktail with your friends and you feel really bad, or you stay up late one night and you pay for it. Whereas when you continue to follow more of that medium path and what Ayurveda recommends with diet, lifestyle, and routine, your medium path kind of gets wider and wider, and you don't have to be so stringent. So yes, that's one of the for me and you both that have, I'll throw out the Ayurvedic words of a lot of pitta and vata in us and not a lot of kapha or compassion or stability or cohesion. We like to go and we like to do, and we have a lot of fire. We could end up burning out. So that middle path is very important for us.
I'm picturing rolling down the lazy river in an inner tube.
Yeah, I a lot of, exactly. So I actually talk about that a lot. It's one of my things of, like, when you look at a river and you look at, there's really turbulent places in the river, or like when there's a waterfall or something, or a little downward turn, everything gets really turbulent, where you can't see things clearly. And then there's the times that the river can be really stagnant, it could pool. But really what Ayurveda is trying to teach us is to have like that flow of a clean, crisp river, and be able to kind of flow with nature rather than against it. So the more you follow Ayurvedic laws of nature, the more you'll be able to have an ease and flow in your life.
So let's go back to this. Sorry, I take us in the weeds. But as a system of preventative wellness, it's focused on the individual and moving from the imbalance to the balance or dis-ease. And for anybody who hadn't caught that, it's dis-ease, not necessarily disease, to a state of being whole. Talk to me a little bit about the absence of dis-ease.
So the absence of dis-ease. So when we look at it in Ayurveda, we look at the mind and the body and the spirit all as one, and absence or decrease of the imbalance in any one of those systems is going to affect the other ones. So it's the balance of all your systems in your body. So it's the balance of your function, your lymph, your blood, your muscles, your bone, all those different tissue layers, your cardiovascular system, all the different systems in your body, but also the elimination systems. So are they in proper working order? Because they're your detox, right? We don't want to keep old stuff in us that we no longer need, that's just toxins running through our system. So it's the balance of our systems, including our mind and our sense organs, and also our roots of elimination. So it's treated as this whole interconnectedness of all of them, and any one of them can cause an imbalance in the other. And this is also like the interconnectedness of us with nature, that we're made from nature and a part of nature. So we tend to live in this world of many conveniences, like heat and electricity, which are all great, except they can really throw off those natural cycles and rhythms in our system, which then would cause the imbalance.
And you talk a little bit, you are someone who brought me back to, I guess, out of some of those conveniences and into more like, where do I fit in my environment? And you talk sometimes about, when we look at animals out in the world, if they're not, if a fish is trying to climb a tree, people would think that fish was crazy.
Right. So I a lot about, when we're talking about trying to flow down that river and follow the cues of nature, we lose that because we could say we can turn on lights at night. And so people will say, well, what's wrong with me staying up till 3 a.m? I felt really good and it felt great. But the slow wear and tear on your body, if that happens one night, it's okay. But the slow wear and tear on our body of not following the natural seasonal rhythms and circadian rhythms really, really does take a toll and stresses our body. So like, I'll give you the example of like, if we saw a bat out during the middle of the day, we would think that there was something wrong with that bat, right? Like that something is really out of balance with that. Or if we saw a bear out in the middle of winter when it's supposed to be hibernating, but we think nothing of going to bed late night after night after night. And research shows that our circadian rhythms are real and that our hormones and our neurotransmitters are affected by not following those circadian rhythms. So a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm recommending to the person when I do an Ayurvedic consult of really just getting back to following those rhythms of nature. And once we get into that routine, our body craves routine. Some people's minds don't, and they like to have like new stimulus, right? We need that to stimulate our brain. But our bodies like to work as like a race car, right? At being tweaked at the right times, knowing that it's going to get the food at a certain time, knowing that we're going to sleep at the right time. If you give it those inputs at the right timing, our bodies will function much, much better and smoother.
And at the core, like the three pillars that most of us know about Ayurveda are diet, lifestyle, and routine, which we're going to get into in a bit. But it also can look at the root cause of a diagnosis.
Exactly. So a lot of times in a medical diagnosis, it's telling us what tissues are affected. Like an example would be, say, a bone is now fused. So in AS, bones can fuse. And it could say, oh, your bone is fused and there's inflammation, but it doesn't tell us why that inflammation occurred. It can't, it could look at your genetics, it could look at other things. But in Ayurveda, we look at something else, not just the tissue that's affected, but the bioenergy that actually caused the tissue dysfunction. And so then what we do is we look at that bioenergy and say, oh, this is imbalanced. We call it a dosha. And then that's what's really getting to the root cause of the dysfunction. So so when we treat, then we look at what the root cause is, and then that's what we treat. So we rebalance that bioenergy or that dosha that's out of balance. So it's not to say that I could then take the tissue and return it back to its state of full health, but we can stop the degenerative process because we're stopping the reason for the inflammation or the pain or limitation.
And to go back to your map analogy, that may be when we pause and look at where we're at on the map.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So there's a different state. Yeah, exactly. I'll just leave it there now. Because if what happens is you could get, thank goodness for Western medicines and getting, helping take down the inflammation or taking away the pain. And what Ayurveda is trying to do is then get rid of that cause of the pain, especially when there's so many things with diet, lifestyle, and routine that are causing us to go out of balance and then causing that dosha to go, or bioenergy to go out of balance and cause those things.
And in terms of, so obviously our listeners love hearing about context of spondyloarthritis. Can we talk a little bit about Ayurveda in that context for that specific diagnosis?
Sure. So in an essay or any of them, what a practitioner is going to do is we're going to look at the classical Ayurvedic texts and understand that disease pathology, and also what's something called samprapti or pathogenesis of that disease and the methods of treatment for it. So we're going to look at that disease as a disturbance of homeostasis caused by unwholesome habits and diet. And it could even help conditions that are more advanced because everything's rooted in these fundamental causes. And it comes down to really like three basic principles of imbalance. Of course, it's the dosha that goes out of balance, but what is the dosha messing with? It's the Agni, the Ama, and the Ojas. So I'm using
really quick. So dosha is your constitution. So people fall into three buckets, right?
Yeah. So dosha is a lot of different. Dosha is bioenergy. Okay. So every living thing is affected by the bioenergies. what happens is a lot of times, because we get these like little snippets on Instagram and social media, et cetera, of like, what's your dosha? So somebody will say, oh, I'm a vata or I'm a pitta. That could be really your constitution and your innate person and where you're at, or it could be your imbalance. So there's 3 bioenergies, and yes, you could be talking about your constitution of who you are, and it could also be talking about your imbalance.
Okay.
So I'm trying not to get into too much of that, because then we're going to get into that's like a whole nother topic for another discussion, because I want to keep this for what's going on with spondyloarthritis. So
so let's get back to the principles.
And I will get back to the dosha and why the dosha disturbance causes these 3 imbalances. And you'll look at this like from any kind of holistic medicine, and even like functional medicine. We'll talk about your digestive fire or your agni. So your agni is your digestive fire, your ama is the toxins, and your ojas is your internal energy reserve, also generically known as your immunity or your resilience. And so before I explain them, I will give you the spoiler that the primary imbalance when you're talking about immune system is your ojas is out of balance or it's depleted. Also in autoimmune diseases, a lot of times the individuals neglecting practices that kind of support that ojas or that immune system. It also happens that disturbed digestion, which would be the agni or the digestive fire, isn't working real well. And that could be due to the timing of your meals, or that you're not eating seasonally, or you're eating things that you might be allergic to or can't digest. And then the food then becomes ama, or toxins that are built up in the body, so that the immune system can't even can't function properly, because there's too much stuff gunked up in the system. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Totally. So that's Ayurveda will look at it in the terms of not only is like the cardiovascular system or the lymphatic system working, but are our routes of elimination open and cleaning out everyday toxins, and then bigger things that might come in like viruses and bacteria or heavy metals, because we need those routes of elimination open to clean those up. So it's really the balance of having like a good digestive fire, so that you're cooking your food and cleaning your system. You're not creating ama or toxins in your system, and that then your immune system can then function at its best.
And what might be some symptoms or results you're seeing when you're a little out of balance in these areas?
So some of the symptoms, like say your digestive fire isn't strong, you might not feel hungry and you might not have appetite. And one of the first stage of digestion is actually having an appetite and having salivation. So if you're cooking really good food for yourself, but that you're not salivating, your body doesn't even know to turn on your digestive enzymes to cook and digest that food. So the signs of your fire not being strong enough would be lack of appetite, not interested in food, things like that. You can also have too high of a digestive fire, and that means you're cooking your food too fast. So my example for that would be, you really need a balanced fire. You asked about symptoms, not about that. So yeah, so you could be hungry all the time. You could not be hungry at all. And you might not feel like you're getting nutrients from your food. So that would all give you reasons or feeling that your fire is not the right intensity. The ama is the symptom of a poor digestive fire, meaning you have toxins in your system because you're not cooking your food properly in your system. So ama, you'd have lethargy. You might have with this disease process, you can have pain. You'll have inflammation because you've got toxins running through your system, so your body can't function up to speed. You could have swelling. If you feel kind of puffy, that's a sign of ama or toxins. If you've got gas or bloat or constipation, those are all signs of ama, not to mention the constipation, meaning you're not using the bathroom daily. and eliminating well daily, then you have constipation. So pain, stiffness, constipation, swelling, puffiness, all of those would be signs of ama or toxins in your system.
And this last couple minutes, the conversation really directs me to think and just verbally say to people that Ayurveda is a very personalized approach, and that you as a practitioner would need to understand sort of the individual and what they're going through to really help them with the map, essentially, right?
Yes. So if somebody came into my office, we look at, I take a subjective, so I hear what their primary complaints are and what their symptoms are. And then I also go into a detail of what their routine is of a day, because I can a lot of times give somebody 2 or 3 gentle, easy things like going to bed a little bit early. Remember, I talked about those circadian rhythms, going to bed a little bit earlier or getting up a little bit earlier, or the timing of their meal or how they eat their food. And those little things can make a big difference. And you can also go about doing Ayurveda just by starting to read and learn about diet, lifestyle, and routine, and start following some of the morning routine or seasonal routines, which is a different way of going about learning about Ayurveda, but still benefits. But yes, if somebody came to my office, then I would look at their pulse, and then I would look at the objective findings and take in all of that to come up with a plan that works for them. So it's kind of really neat because you could really, you can individualize it for the person and where they're at, which I love. It's not like you have to do this or you have to do that. And if these suggestions don't work, there's a lot more in the queue that Ayurveda could recommend that could help. You know, so depending on the person, somebody might want to be really independent and say, I can do this all on my own. Give me 5 things you want me to do. I'll come back in a month and tell you how I'm doing. And somebody else might need a little bit more hand holding or a little bit more guidance and help being motivated. And that all comes down to our individual constitution or dosha, and then also what the imbalance is in our system or vikriti of those doshas.
So I want to ask you a little bit about stress in this process for the patient. More and more we hear about stress impacting our system. What is the thought of Ayurveda on that? And I know there's other evidence out there.
So stress is anything that's going to take our body out of balance. Okay. And so that ojas that I was just talking about, that's our immune system working to keep ourselves balanced. And the wider the medium path you have, the more you could tolerate little stressors. So we all have stress in our day and in our life, and it's how we handle those stresses and respond. So Ayurveda is going to help you respond rather than react to stress. It gives us this mindfulness and ability to take pause and observe what's happening so that the stress doesn't amp up our sympathetic system and cause that whole cycle of being in a fight, flight, freeze response, and allows us to return to balance better. Stress, of course, is going to cause, as I said, that imbalance in the sympathetic versus parasympathetic, and then that is going to cause the pain and inflammation. It increases cortisol levels. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. But so what Ayurveda is going to do in following especially morning routine, I kind of mentioned this earlier, if we treat our bodies more like a race car than, the old Chevy sitting in, and we tweak it every morning, and we give our body the routine of waking up our sense organs and waking up, cleaning up our bodies so that all of our channels are open, we've now attended to our body so that when we go out into the world, not only can we be present for anybody that we come in contact with, but when stress comes at us, we could see it and observe it and not take it in the same way. So Ayurveda really helps us kind of learn to discern what's us and what's what's not us, which is something that the immune system, when you talk about AS, our body, an autoimmune disease is a disease that we are attacking our own system. We're building antibodies to our own tissue. And so we can't discern what is us versus what is not us.
And I think that's really profound. The idea that autoimmune disease in some way is the body not being able to discern what is itself.
It's huge.
And it for me, it prevents integrity. And I mean the state of being whole, aside from high moral code.
Right.
But it prevents integrity, which is what so many of us seek, is this ability to be whole in who we are. So the more, I'm going to use your words, the more ama, the less able we are to discern what is ourselves, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So the more toxins, so the more stuff in us. I mean, think about your house, or like when there's too much stuff in your house and you can't walk through the hallways without banging your toe on a box that you just haven't had time to move, or that pile of papers that's on your desk that you keep falling and then you keep lifting and putting it back up. All of that's blocking channels in your house, right? And it's not allowing you to function as smoothly in your house. So now imagine a bunch of stuff in your body, the ama, the toxins, that's not allowing you to have proper flow through your day. And then you talk about the dis-ease or disease process. And when there's too much ama or toxins that down to the tissue integrity, you're talking integrity, that phospholipid membrane that's around every single cell and every single organ and every single vessel of your body, that there's a dysbiosis, or that breaks, and that phospholipid membrane, like that's leaky gut, or the phospholipid membrane it doesn't have the integrity anymore, and it opens, and then things that are in your gut end up pouring into your system, and things that are in your system that shouldn't be in your gut, and everything gets mixed up, right? And so then how is your body supposed to even really know? And that's the stages of disease in Ayurveda. We have right. We have these, can I talk about this for a minute?
Yeah, should we back up and just talk about what all of this has to do with the bioenergies? Or do you want to push that a little bit down the road?
Yes. Well, let me go. We
keep going.
We went on a divergent, and now
I know.
My head's there, so I can't.
Okay, go.
But so it's yeah, because the bioenergies are what is moving into the tissue. So let me talk about stages of disease, and we'll get back to the bioenergies. Okay. But so when we're talking about the tissue integrity, and we're just talking about phospholipid membranes, and then that opening up, like an example of how these bioenergies cause this inflammation or whatever is, I'll talk about the bioenergies. I think I got my head back on. So we have these three bioenergies, and there's one that is they all have their own purpose, and we all have a different. When we talk about our constitution, each one of us has a different amount of these bioenergies in us. So the first one's called vata. It's the energy of movement, and when you have excess movement in your body, it's kind of like that turbulent river, right? Or like the waterfall, and the water's going all over. So I think of like a snow globe, and you shake a snow globe and there's all that snow going on. That would be an excess of vata. So that excess of vata is then going to move in the wrong direction. So in the body, that could cause constipation, that could cause pain, that could cause constriction, that can cause spasm, or any of these things sounding like things that people might have with SA, or AS. So that's that excessive movement. Then you've got the energy of transformation, which is the digestion, the metabolism, the fire. And that's not just digestion of your food, but also your digestion of your ideas and your thoughts. And then following through with move, like if you have a great idea, can you then put that into action? That would be the vata energy with the flow. And then you have that energy of cohesion or stability. And when that is out of balance, you can have stagnation of the flow of the river of your body, meaning stagnation where there's congestion, heaviness, lethargy. So that when we talked about ama, excess ama is also excess of that cohesion or stability, meaning like you want good lubrication of your joints, but you don't want excess congestion either in your joints or in your like tumors or cysts or things like that would be signs of excess congestion or excess mucus. We want mucus. We want salivation. I just talked about how important salivation is. It's the first stage of digestion. It tells our digestive enzymes to go on. But if excess salivation or excess of that kind of energy is going to cause an imbalance in your system.
Because it gets
So with
on
each, pardon me?
It gets on the move.
Yeah, it gets on the move. So one more sentence, then I'm going to talk about it getting on the move in the 6 stages of disease. But so each disease is going to have a primary dosha or bioenergy that's out of balance. And that's what I was saying. We look at what we're not only going to treat, we're going to treat the pain or we're going to treat the inflammation by looking at these bioenergies and getting them back into balance. So we look at which one's in excess, which is also looking at which ones aren't in excess, because if one's in excess, the other ones are probably depleted. But anyway, because they're the triad of the 3. But so we're going to look at which energies of those bioenergies are out of balance and get those back in balance with a lot of different diet. And then we'll talk about treatments, but with diet, lifestyle, routine, or something even bigger like herbs and actual physical therapies, not physical therapy of Western medicine, but physical hands-on therapies to help move those doshas back so that we get you back into balance. So now we could talk about the 6 stages of disease, unless you need clarification on all of that I just said.
No, I think that's perfect.
Okay, so when we look at stages of disease in Ayurveda, we're looking, that's a 6-stage disease process. And what is happening with the bioenergies and will determine on what stage of disease you're in. So all day long, we kind of go into this like stage 1 and 2 of this 6-stage disease process, meaning we forget to eat breakfast, we get up late and we forget to eat breakfast, and then we're running, and then we end up having a lunch meeting and we forget to, so we don't eat lunch. That pitta or that fire, that energy of digestion and metabolism, now the fire's really working in the stomach saying, hey, nothing in here for me to cook. And then what can happen is that fire could start moving up. For some people, they get hangry. Some people's constitution, when they're hungry, they get angry. We call it hangry. But really what that is that it's that bioenergy increasing in its home, and then it starts moving and bubbling up in its home. Now, if you eat something, then the fire goes back down and things are okay. However, if we don't listen to those subtle dosha imbalances, and that's just one of many, but if we don't listen to that subtle, oh my God, thing over time, that bubbling energy day after day of day, what's going to happen if hydrochloric acid's coming up into your esophagus? Yeah, it's going to start burning the tissue, right? Because that fire isn't where it's supposed to be. It is now on the move. So that's kind of when it starts bubbling over. It's in the stage 3. And then it's going to go and it's going to start spreading from where it's supposed to be in the stomach, maybe into the esophagus, maybe up, really badly, maybe up to the throat, right? So that would be kind of it spreading, and then it can make its home somewhere else. So then it starts lodging and moving into a different tissue. So why would I say that this would cause then yes, this would cause disease or heartburn or things like that. But remember how we just talked about the agni and the ama and the ojas, right? The digestive fire, the ama or the toxins. So now if our digestive fire isn't in its home to cook the food that we eat isn't going to be cooked and broken down the right way. And then our body can't break it down. And then our food then becomes toxins in our system. Just excess stuff that's kind of murking around that we're not able to digest and get good nutrition from, and just circulate more as toxins. And that's when we start getting puffy and swollen, or we can't digest we can't eliminate our waste products because we haven't been able to break them down to know what we're supposed to be keeping in and what's supposed to leave.
Okay. I want to pause here because when I came to you, it was nearly 10 years ago, which is frightening to think that. And I was struggling with the diagnosis, with going through all the medications. I wasn't responding well to a number of medications. I think when I met you, I was on 8 or 9 medications. And my doctor, my rheumatologist, said, you have to go see LB. And I remember very early on, you said something to me like, if you are here and you want to do the work with me, we will figure out how to do that together. But if you don't want to do the work, I have other people who want to be on my table. And the day that I can remember it like it was yesterday, the day that you described the stages of dis-ease to me, things all made sense. And it made me feel empowered to be able to move back down that ladder. Right, because the diagnosis will come at the later stages. And as you described them as such a caring, like, I know people can't feel it from here, but like the care and love you put into each patient is very evident. Helping me walk back down that ladder was one of the most empowering things that I've ever experienced in my life. And I've done all of this over the last 10 years, right, in conjunction with traditional also treatment plans. But just talk to me a little bit about, to sum it up, it really is like trying to clean things up. I look at it as walking back down the ladder. How do you go about treating someone with AS? I know we have experience.
So first of all, I have chills from hearing you say how empowered you felt. I remember like the light switch going off in you. Because, I'm a gardener, so I plant seeds and I water them and I hopefully put sunlight on them. And sometimes they sprout, sometimes they don't. Sometimes I replant the seeds. Sometimes I try a different crop, try a different way of getting in for people to hear what I'm saying. I could say what I want, but if people aren't hearing it, the communication's not happening, and then there's not going to be any transformation, right?
Right.
So depending on that constitution, your question was, how do I work with somebody with AS? And it all depends on their constitution and where they're at and how they want to go about it. So when somebody comes in, I will hear what they're saying to me. I'll hear what their complaints are, what their symptoms are, and what their goals are. So I think when I first started being a physical therapist and then a manual therapist and then an Ayurvedic practitioner, my goal was always to see the person to what I felt could be their best. And sometimes what I wanted for them was like, they just wanted to be able to, say, get out of the chair and walk, because that's as far as they thought that without pain, they thought that was as far as they'd ever be able to come. But I would always, I would see it from where I am. And I had to realize, which was a learning for me, is that not everybody wants to put in the same amount of time and energy. And they might not have the same goals. They might not be able to realize what those goals can be, right? So there's 3 different, depending on the person and depending on their constitution, I'm going to treat them differently. If they're a really fiery person, I might have to give them they might want 5 things to go home with. If there's somebody that's more I'm more of a much more laid back, kind of more of a quote kapha person who has a lot more stability and cohesion, tendency towards let somebody else do the work. Their recommendations are going to be different than I'm going to give somebody that's the pitta, or somebody that say is very scattered, that turbulent or bird-like has 15 things they want to do and they want to do everything, but as they're on the way to do one, they forget about it and drop that and go to something else, right? So each one of those people I'm going to meet them where they're at and give them something that's going to help them at that point. Does that kind of answer that piece?
Yeah, for sure.
And then so in traditional Ayurveda, there's different treatments. There's the Shodhana versus the Shamana. So I'm sorry I'm using some Sanskrit words, but it gives me the vibration of really what I'm talking about. So Shodhana is if we give you the analogy of a house, Shodhana is cleaning it from top to bottom, not only like a cleaning crew coming in and making it all look pretty so that you can have a party, but opening up every drawer and every closet. Is this needed or is this not needed? Marie Kondoing. Have you ever heard of her? Marie Kondo, who comes in, is does this bring you joy? Do you use it? And so the Shodhana, what happens is you can go to a center, an Ayurvedic center, and have a panchakarma. And there's 3 phases to this whole cleaning or cleanse. It's not just like a cleanse where you take some vitamins or that you don't eat. In fact, in most Ayurvedic cleanses, I put that in air quotes, cleanses, you're eating 3 meals a day. Because as you talked about stress before, this is a little bit of a divergence, but you don't want the body under stress if you're trying to clean it up and you're trying to get into a parasympathetic state. So in Ayurveda, we don't cleanse by starving the system and putting it into stress. We try to de-stress the system. So there's a lot of preparation. So with the diet and the herbs, what will happen is you will get therapies of, say, massage, and some of it might be dry massages if you have a lot of congestion or heaviness in your system. Whereas if you're a very dry person, it'll be oil massages to lubricate your tissues and get them ready to be able to then take that excess dosha, move it back into central circulation, back into the digestive tract, and eliminate it. So the Shodhana is really getting to the root cause, okay? And that's, as I said, sorry about that. That's getting to, as I said, the root cause and rebalancing that dosha. This is followed up by the other things that you'll be doing with the Shodhana, or if you go in for a panchakarma, is they'll give you rejuvenation afterwards. So that'll be herbs and diet, lifestyle, and routine choices. So that would be really, really cleaning out the house, right? Sometimes just as an example of this, I've been working with somebody with AS for 4 years, and she is a physician. I think 4 years at least. And she originally came to me because of her pain, and her SI kept going out, and she couldn't move her big toe joints, and she just wanted more exercise physical therapy from me. And I taught her stuff on the OOV, et cetera, et cetera. And she's like, my SI just keeps going out. And she couldn't see it couldn't look back at the forest. I kept saying, maybe if you start going to bed a little bit earlier. She was very pitta, high fire. Jill, you know what I'm talking about with that, right?
You know what you're talking
the runaway
about.
Train, and your energy, you could see what I'm doing in the video right now, being really, really tense and fiery. Well, the flow isn't there. Remember that river? We're trying to get the flow. But if your fire is always going too high and everything's getting constricted because you're always on to the next task, you're not having proper flow. Think about your diaphragm, and you think about stress and just getting oxygen to your tissues. But if you're always on fire and you're always moving at 1,000,000 miles a second, you're never letting your diaphragm breathe right. And this goes into what you said about in previous podcasts about yoga and meditation, which are part of Ayurvedic routine, right?
Right.
But that diaphragm, if it's not functioning properly and it's locked down, it affects 6 different systems in your body. It affects your gut microbiome. So you could be eating all the right foods and taking all the right supplements, but if you never let your diaphragm breathe properly, it's affecting your gut microbiome. It's affecting your parasympathetic sympathetic state. You're being in rest and digest, or being in stress and increased cortisol levels. I can keep going, but I don't want to. I don't want to diverge too much because we were on. But so anyway, so that would be one thing, the Shodhana, going into a Panchakarma center and saying, I'm all in, I'm going to do this. And then the trick is to get home and then try to maintain. Now they've just made your medium path much wider, right? Because they've cleaned all your channels in your body and things are flowing properly and you're eliminating properly. Now, jumping back into your regular lifestyle, can you maintain and continue to work with that? Right?
Right.
Some people choose, I mean, in Ayurveda, they recommend having a Panchakarma once or twice a year. Definitely at the season changes, spring, winter to spring, and then summer to fall. Those are two really like auspicious times to do a cleanse or a Panchakarma. Now, time, money, energy, not everybody's going to take off 2 weeks or 1 week and go into a center. And then also, as I said, there's that piece about carryover, right? And can they actually carry it over into their daily routine or lifestyle? So there are things called home cleanses. And again, I put that in air quotes because cleanses in Ayurveda, as I said, aren't about fasting all the time. Most of the time, they're not about fasting. But they give you could do like a 14-day cleanse where there's a preparation stage, and then there's the more of the cleaning out stage, and then the rejuvenation stage, and they give you the herbs and they recommend what to eat for those. You could do that with an Ayurvedic practitioner where it could be much more one-on-one, or you could do that. You can look online, and like Dr. Juilliard Life Spa has a great one. It's a 14-day cleanse, but then you are pretty much taking the same herbs as everybody else. So it's a little bit more generalized.
Yeah. And we've done this. And in fact, now my kids this time of year and going into the fall always ask for, can we do the cleanse?
That's fantastic. I didn't realize you did it.
We still, I wouldn't say we're perfect, but I try like this time of year, and I have hacked it a bit where I don't do as much preparation, but it's a lot of nourishing food and spices and nutrients. I feel like I make it in the crock pot now instead of.
That's fantastic. So you're talking about like the khichdi, the rice and the lentils.
Yeah, like the khichdi and lentil, and we add sometimes like omega-3s to it if we can, and
great.
But I think it does help. And when you have teenagers asking for it, they feel better too, I think. Because
I feel like your kids know what it feels like to get back to balance. And like the analogy of like the spring and fall, I live in a small home and I have a tiny closet. So if I have all like the cleaning out the closets or cleaning out the home, if I have all my winter clothes in through spring and summer, and I'm tripping over a scarf trying to get to a tank top, that's not a really efficient use of my closet, right?
Right.
And everything gets mixed up, and I'm in a wool sweater in the middle of the sun in 90 degrees. It's just nothing is working right. And so the spring cleanse and also the fall cleanse helps remove the excess dosha or the bioenergy from your body that has been built up over the season before.
Right.
And so if you, as I said, when you're doing like a home cleanse, or even if you think about the spices that you would use to improve there's spices to improve your agni or your digestive fire. And there's spices, you had mentioned spices. Thank you for remembering those. There's ones to deepen the fire, and there's also ones to cook or burn ama and toxins in your system. So in these Ayurvedic cleanses, those are the herbs that you'll be taking.
Okay. So I know we're quite chatty today, but this has been amazing. So the last option you sometimes work with people on, depending on where they're at in the journey, is just looking for the causative factors. And maybe it's not as right. So you kind of put it into 3 categories. One is
Right. One is like the really cleaning out, getting to the root cause. The next is like a cleanse, which is less, a little bit more mild. And the third one is actually where I start with all my patients, my yogis, my clients. I don't know, who people that come to me for this is usually this is where I start with, for a few reasons, because what Ayurveda taught me, which is so logical, but for some reason I couldn't get it into my head, being this Pitta Vata that was on fire, and always thought more is not just more, but more is better, right. And not more is out of balance. But anyway, avoid the causative factors. And so when I was talking about, I look at some people and I could give them 2 or 3 different, very gentle lifestyle changes, of avoiding the causative factors. And some of them they don't realize are the causative factors, right? Like when you're eating your meals that you've just spent time and energy cooking and it's all organic, if you're reading or you're watching TV or you're talking, all those things, if it's the digestive fire that isn't good or the digestion of your food isn't good, maybe it's looking at just turning off the electronics while you're eating. Or right. Maybe if you're a CEO or a really busy person and then you eat your lunch on the fly, but the fire is still up in your brain and the wind energy is still bringing that fire up towards your head, you're going against trying to put food in and getting it down. So maybe it's just like massaging your jaw and getting your parotids to start salivating and slowing down the wind energy and getting it moving in the right direction. So a lot of people, I think I started mentioning somebody that I've been seeing for 3 or 4 years and I got on some divergence from it. But finally, she did the cleanse. She didn't go and get a panchakarma, but this is the 4 years with me on multiple different medications, etc. The one who said that her big toes hurt and she couldn't walk right and that her SI kept going out. And after doing the 14-day cleanse, she walked into the office and said, I am a different person. I am a better person.
Aww.
And like, I wanted to cry because I knew this was in her, but there was just so many apps open, so much busyness that she couldn't get there. She couldn't feel her true nature. And she's like, and she's a Western medicine doctor. And I never tell people to go off their meds. I always say, if that's one of your goals, I refer them back to their physician. That's not me. That has nothing to do with me. She said, I am not on any of my meds. And I have more range of motion in my toe joints. I have no pain. And not only does my physical body, am I a better person physical body wise, but I actually went to a store the other day. And instead of being on my phone or thinking about the 13 things I had to do after this store, I said hello to the person behind the register and how are you? And she said, oh, my dog's going in for surgery. And she started talking to this woman who had 4 rescue dogs. And by the end of the conversation, she went and got all of the money that she could find in her purse and was like, please take this. She's like, what? She goes, I didn't tell you this to take your money. She's like, no, please take it for your dogs. And just to hear, like, to bring us back to being human and that interconnectedness to all other beings, we are just like this microcosm of this whole macrocosm. And how we feel inside us is how we're going to see the world.
And and what you just described is our ability to connect with another person when we are feeling whole. And that is so powerful. And I think in general, not for people who are spondy, but in general, we need to focus on some of those things. I think, okay, so I'm gonna start to wrap us up here. We're gonna do another episode, right, on food specifically, and I think 2 things just really quick that we should grab onto. One is just this reiteration of like diet, lifestyle, routine are at the core of it. And one question I've been asked a few times along this in terms of Ayurveda, when I'm using it, is like, where is there research on Ayurveda? And there is some research and good research, like we talked about, like NIH has done a couple studies with rheumatoid arthritis. But why isn't it this like widely researched approach?
So I feel for a few different reasons. I mean, like when you like on the logistic end, we're not looking at treating a diagnosis with a certain medication. We're looking at every single person can come in with the same symptom of pain or inflammation, but then we're having to look at which dosha is out of balance. And so there's not one drug for pain or one drug for inflammation. So depending on the agni, the ama, your age, the stage of the disease is all going to determine what cocktail of herbs they're going to put together. So you can't do a study of like 20 people were given this amount of these 3 herbs, right? Because that's not how Ayurveda works.
Right.
It's going to say this person needs this. And then as you're working with your Vaidya, your Ayurvedic doctor, they're going to continue to look and say, oh, now this needs to be modified and you need less haritaki and more bibitaki, or we need to change the medium to ghee. So we change the medium of how we put those herbs in your system depending on which tissue layer we're looking at. So as you progress in your Ayurvedic Panchakarma, they're going to keep changing those. Right. So I think that's probably like you can't do it as a regular research study.
It's not a pill, it's a lifestyle.
Exactly. It's a pill, it's a lifestyle. Besides being a lifestyle, the drugs are changed. The drugs, meaning the dravya, the herbs, are changed as you progress through the healing or have a setback. And it's also about modifying at the same time those lifestyle choices to avoid the causative factors. So I think there's too many pieces to it. And I think there's also probably some concern about the herbs and how clean they are, etc. So that could also be another thing.
Sure.
But there are many, many case studies. I mean, there's tons of case studies out there of how I'm one. I had Hashimoto's. I had all the blood work showed that I had Hashimoto's. And through Ayurveda, I have completely healthy, balanced blood work.
Right. Okay. So we're going to wrap on this. I am so grateful for you. And again, I like the lessons I have learned about myself and how much better I feel when I'm behaving. And I feel empowered. And you and I have talked a lot recently about like, this is a practice of return to ourself. So I'm grateful for you. And I have one final question for you. Do you, any one word of advice or thought to land us for today?
Well, I think you just said a few really important things. So yes, it's empowering to the person to know that we can be behind the driver's seat, and we can choose once we know, we have a map and we know where we are on the map. So I really hope that we have sparked in all of you a little fire to learn more about Ayurveda, and that you do have the power to choose what you put into your body. And that's not just your food, but what the thoughts and the emotions and what you want to hold on to. And I hope you enjoy the journey of awakening the healer within you.
Amazing. Thank you, LB.
Thank you, Jill.
SpondyCast was made possible by donations from the Spondylitis Association of America's individual members and our show's corporate sponsor, AbbVie. Since our founding in 1983, the Spondylitis Association of America has been the face, voice, and leading nationwide nonprofit, educating, empowering, and advocating for people living with spondyloarthritis. Through our extensive work with patients, the medical community, and partners, we provide information and resources to help people impacted by the disease live better lives and champion research to find a cure.